Welcome to episode 8 of the Dan Wilkins Show. Last week we interviewed Hogan Harris, a left-handed pitcher in the Oakland Athletics organization. But today, our guest is Ward Burton, a former NASCAR Cup Series driver and a 2002 Daytona 500 winner. Welcome to the show, Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Daniel. Just Ward, please.
All right, well, I'll definitely call you by that. But for my viewers that are unaware, I like to kind of do my show in an interesting format. I like to kind of tell a story with the guest. I like to kind of do a little bit of a chronological workaround, and I like to go from one end to the other, from the beginning to the present day. That's exactly what we're going to do here on the Dan Wilkins Show. So, Ward Burton, we will begin with this first question here. So, what first sparked your interest in racing? I'm assuming as a very young child. What kind of inspired you to start racing, cars and go-karts or whatever in general?
Well, my dad was a huge motorsports advocate, and he's just an insane competitor anyway. So when he was very young up to high school, he was such a good athlete. He was first string in the varsity in basketball, football, and baseball.
Wow.
Back in the day when, you could run your cars like you wanted to on the highway and all that stuff, he drag race and all that. He also ran his stock cars, which was old Pontiac, at a road course near us called VIR, Virginia International Raceway.
Yes, Virginia International,
Dad got me a two-seater go-kart when I was about 6. Of course, I'm the oldest of, got 2 younger brothers. Anyway, the thing never did go fast enough. And anyway, Dad took me to a dirt go-kart track when I was 8 and asked me, would I like to do that? And I said, sure. Anyway, we went up there the next weekend and won the race. And pretty much after that, it was my dad's enthusiasm. Dad's the one that started buying me fully racing go-karts. And then the next thing you know, my brother Brian got old enough, Jeff got old enough, and then we started racing in different classes. And so it was really my dad's enthusiasm that got us, any of us, into racing.
So moving up through your early years of racing and into your first Busch Series ride in 1990. So in 1992, you won your first ever Busch Series race at Rockingham in North Carolina. What was it like for you to finally win that first ever NASCAR race at one of the top 2 divisions at the time?
Well, it had taken a lot of effort. I really, when I got in my first street stock around 86, pretty much everything came second after that. The outdoors, parties, so going on in that time. I didn't do any of that till after I finished working for my dad in a construction company and work on a race car. So when we won that race with A.G. Dillard and Gwaltney hot dogs on the car, it was a lot of people that won that race with me. I mean, I was thinking a lot of people still do. Not only my parents, but a lot of other folks that had really spent a lot of time of preparing the cars or either owning the cars, and it's a large list. So I won the race. I had the best handling car that day, and I passed Davey Allison for the win, and it passed Earnhardt right before then. And Davey came up to me after the race and found us in the infield, and I always thought he was a really, really special person to at least take the time for a nobody to say good job, and you drove me clean, and that's the way I'll drive you.
And I mean, Davey Allison, he was definitely an incredible driver, especially at the Cup Series level, where he almost won the championship, except for a pretty bad race at Atlanta in the last race. And then, unfortunately, a few months later, he passed away in an aircraft incident. But
yeah, that was tragic. I think at the end of the day, Davey was a really good person, and that's at the end of the day, that's probably more important. He had good character, good qualities about him more than how good of a wheelman he was.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard from a lot of people that Davey Allison was definitely a class act in the world of NASCAR, and I mean, it's definitely unfortunate he passed so soon, but still, he was a good driver. He raced people clean, like you said, and he just overall was a good driver. But in 1994, you made the jump from the Busch Series to the Winston Cup Series. Do you think that, considering that you're jumping from one division to another, you're going in a different car than usual, was that a rough transition, or do you think like it was an easy transition? Like, what do you think that kind of transition was?
I think for me personally, I was more than ready. But I had been very, very loyal to my car owners. And A.G. Dillard, we really had a good season in 1993. We had a great sponsor with Hardee's, Freddie Fryer, hell of a good guy, and an awesome race car driver. He's got more wins than most drivers, all of us put together. He just passed away this year. He was my crew chief. And, we were just a small group of guys in Charlottesville, Virginia, really out of the hub of racing. Anyway, Hardee's and Mr. Dillard wanted to go cup racing. And little did I know at the time, but we just did not literally have the resources to do so. So, that lasted about a little bit over a year and 3/4. But, during that time, Felipe Lopez, Ronnie Crooks, to name a few, we did a lot with little. I mean, we set a track record at Charlotte. We finished second at Pocono. We should have won the last race in Atlanta. We were leading the race with like 30-some laps to go and blew a motor. But, we just literally did not have the resources. And unfortunately, it really hurt Mr. Dillard, who's passed away also. That was a hell of a fine Southern gentleman financially, just because it just was a lot more expensive than running a Busch car.
And I mean, just when you make that transition from a lower level, like a lower tier division, to the top level, to the top Cup Series, there's not many drivers who can successfully become just dominant and like to the top of the line right away at the very beginning. I'd say it's very rare. Even like the best of the best, Jimmy Johnson, like he wasn't doing incredibly well when he started out, nor did Jeff Gordon. Like there's very few NASCAR drivers who can pull that off, and with a small team like you had, definitely was difficult.
It's all about the resources.
Yes.
So I mean, you see what Jimmy Johnson did when he got in the Hendricks team. Jeff Gordon was doing good in the Busch Series, but he was in a different league when he got with Hendricks. So, you got to realize back in them days we were running against Ernie Irvin, Harry Gant, Dale, Sterling Marlin. We were running against some really good Cup drivers. So that when you could beat them or run with them, I think it was 1990 or 91, I was driving a Busch car for Mike Swain. It was 3 of us. And only 2 of us were full time, and that was me. And I never said I was a mechanic, but I could do what I could do. But Rick Wren and I took a Mike's car with Texas Pete sponsorship to Charlotte, and we ran top 5, top 10 all day long. And that was before the Busch guys really could run with the Cup team and the Cup drivers. So that was another big break for me. But I don't think the leap it's a big leap. Don't get me wrong. The races are a lot longer. It's a lot more learning to do, but it's still 100% dependent on the resources your team has.
Yeah, and when you're making that adjustment, like you said, from the Busch Series to the Cup Series, you also got to factor in, like you said, the fact that races are longer, the fact that the mileages are longer. the Daytona race for the Busch Series, or now the Xfinity Series, is like 300 miles. The Cup Series is 500, and the Truck Series is 250. So the lower down you go, the less less mileage you got to go, the less laps you got to go. So once you're at the Cup Series, you really got to go far. You got to, like you said, the resources. That's really all that matters in the world of NASCAR.
And it's even more so today. With technology finding the sport, just you and I talking on this screen, I mean, technology has found the sport, which has really drove the cost up tremendously with the amount of engineering support that you have to be competitive.
In 1995, this was your second season in the Cup Series. You won your first Cup race. It was at Rockingham, which kind of ironically, you won your first Busch race and your first Cup race at the same track. Do you think you were like exceptionally like good at that track for one reason or another?
Darlington and Rockingham, it was real clear to me what I needed my car to do. If I could get the balance right and I could get the nose to work, I don't think anybody could beat me at those two tracks. When I got the car like I wanted it, that's a tall order. The same year, in 94, we didn't make Daytona. We didn't make Rockingham. We barely made the Richmond race. So, that just goes to show you I could not carry the 3,400 pounds around the track solely. But that 95 race, I had just Mr. Dillard and I had split ways, and that was the 5th or 6th race probably with Bill Davis Racing with MBNA as a sponsor, which was a joy to drive for them. Just super good people, still good friends with a few of them now. But that was a special day. After that, 96, 97, part of 98, we had some really good races that we dominated, should have won. We didn't have some of the equipment that we needed, like dynos to check our motors. So we broke a lot of motors. We lost some races in the pits. Obviously, I made a few mistakes also. But it was a really bumpy road, 96, 97. And it was because Pontiac changed the body style. So with a smaller team, all we did is change the body from one Grand Prix to the next. And, I'm not an aero guy, and our balance just wasn't working. So the same spring shock geometry and all in the front and the rear was working in 95 and didn't work in 96. Even when we went to Rockingham with the same, not the same car, the same setup, just wasn't working in 96. So, as a driver, I was really dependent on people around me to be able to figure those things out and get the balance right. I can give them the information, but it was hard for me to physically fix it.
And I mean, you also, along with winning 2 races at Rockingham, you also won 2 races at Darlington, like you said. And most of it is attributed to the balance and, just making sure you get everything right, because everything in NASCAR, it's very precise. It's, one little thing can be off and it can ruin the entire race. It's just,
if you
that's the thing about NASCAR.
Yeah, one little link in the chain of all your workers missing, you're going to pay the toll.
So moving on now, you're moving to the number 22 car with Bill Davis Racing, and the in now the Dodge car, and you're at the 2002 Daytona 500. This is just 1 year after Dale Earnhardt Sr. passed away at the same track. Did you feel that there were like heightened emotions, or just heightened overall, just like a different feel to the race than there was before?
No. Look, back in that time frame, between ARCA, sometimes Dash, the Dash Series, Busch Grand National, and Winston Cup, we were losing, I would say on the average, 3 to 6 drivers a year, maybe more. Neil Bonnet was parked right next to me in 94. I'm pretty certain it was 94 when he passed away. I'm not sure what happened at the car in 3 and 4. Pretty much the same spot where Dale lost his life. So it was just a little bit. It was quite a bit more common. I think not that that was a good thing. Certainly, remorseful for all of them and their families. It was just a risk we took. We accepted it and didn't give it a second thought. But back to Daytona, we had gotten some top fives. We always ran good on the plate races most of the time, and had some good shots to get some good finishes, and we did. But in 01, we had the best car. We were going to win that race. Michael Walter, if I hadn't got wrecked on the backstretch, would not have won that race. Anyway, so going into the 02 race, we did not have as good a car. We didn't have the speed. We knew, or I knew, that the break was going to be of whether I missed the big one or not. And we did. And we missed it. If you watch the replay when the 24 got into 20, or the 29 tried to block the 24 going turn 1, I literally missed it by that much. I came on the radio and right then I just said, man, we got a shot at this thing now. So, and then it all just pivoted out when Sterling and Jeff got together. But we had finally gotten our car at the end of the race to handle right. And we had gotten some better speed. So we were just in position to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I mean, Daytona, it's it's kind of a hit or miss race, I guess you could say. There's almost a guarantee there's going to be a big wreck, but the severity of the wreck and the amount of drivers involved and the amount of drivers taken out of the race, it's definitely varying depending on what race it is and what the circumstances are. But you got very lucky to miss it. So once you avoided that wreck and once you got clear of everything that was going on the racetrack, and once you were basically near the front or even out in front, were you feeling like really confident just in your own mind and like in your own just sort of thought bubble? Did you like think that I'm going to win this race? I'm going to win the Daytona 500?
Particularly Daytona and Talladega, you can't control your destiny. You don't have full control of your destiny. Just like what happened in 01, Robbie Gordon got in the back of me coming off 2 from a pit stop, and that took about 16, 17 of us out. Tony Stewart actually got hurt in that wreck. So the following year, I was just enough behind Gordon that when it happened, that if you watch it, I moved the steering wheel just enough that I didn't spin out. So a lot of luck involved with it. I mean, whether I was or anybody else, are you in the wrong place at the wrong time or the right place at the right time? You just can't control your destiny. But I was confident. My team was gelling. Dodge support was helping us. Cap was being a great sponsor. We had a lot of synergy. We didn't have a teammate in the race. Our teammate didn't make the race. But yeah, I was very confident. I was very comfortable running at Daytona. I always liked Daytona from the first time I went there. So, from there, it was just on that last restart, not to miss a gear, try to watch behind me or where the line's going, and it just worked our way. So we should have won a couple other ones, but we got that.
So after, or I should say during those final moments of the Daytona 500, what was like the moment? Like maybe it was the final lap, maybe it was on the backstretch, turn 3, turn 4, whatever. What was that kind of moment where you realized all I got to do is push, but other than that, I got this in the bag?
Coming off a 4, the last lap, I knew from Elliott had gotten around Jeff Bodine. about the lap before, I think, coming off of 2. And, Jeff Odine's a crafty old veteran. So when Elliott got behind me, I pretty much was pretty confident that we had become single file at that point. So unless something broke loose, somehow or another, somebody got on the outside of me. The way the cars were at that day, at that end of the race, I really didn't have much of a threat. But, you don't ever know. You could have a tire issue, motor issue. I mean, a lot of things could go on. But, once we crossed the start-finish line, it was a celebration. I almost came right in the pits when I came back around. But I just decided, I'm going to take an extra lap, kind of get my composure. And I was really good friends with a lot of the guys that were on the safety crew. So when cars would crash, they'd come out with their trucks to clean up and check on the drivers. And Johnny Ponder and Vic and a bunch of the guys. So I stopped back there and high-fived them, and then got to victory lane as quick as I could and see my family and all the crew.
I mean, that's got to be great for you to win the Daytona 500, especially when you had only had a few wins in the NASCAR top division to that point. You had won at Darlington, you had won at Rockingham. And I mean, before that, there was a few races that you had won at Busch Series as well. I mean, it just had to be exhilarating. Like, it had to just be like a adrenaline-filled moment, just like I just won the most popular race in all of NASCAR, right?
It was. And, at the same time, as I look back on my racing career, I always thought of others before I did myself. When I was with A.G. Dillard, I had 2 top running car owners call me about driving their car. Mr. Dillard had helped me tremendously. All of a sudden, I was making a living racing in the Busch Series, so I didn't take the offers. Same thing with Bill Davis. He didn't expend that same loyalty, I think it was 04, 05, but I pretty much was loyal to people that I felt like could help me. And consequently, I should have won a lot more races. I mean, I don't think there's many drivers out there that's won Rockingham. Should have won Darlington probably 5 times. The rain got us twice from coming in the pits, but that have won those races without winning many more. And so, as I look back on it, I probably should have just looked after myself a little bit more and figured out a way to still not hurt the team with my leaving. But that was going to be a tall order to do at times, because there were a few times the sponsors told me they were leaving if I left, and I knew that would hurt the team and then some of the guys, employees, and all that. So that was just decisions I made, and I don't feel bad for them, but consequently, I didn't win as much races I should have.
So in New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2003, you won what would be your final Cup Series race. Besides the fact that that was your last Cup Series win, I'm talking about like in the moment at the time. Was there anything special about that race in particular at New Hampshire?
Well, at New Hampshire was a place I had really struggled, and I really couldn't figure out why, because I could get around Martinsville well. Some other flat tracks like IRP, and a lot of it was the brake buys and the setup, and just for some reason or other, I just did. If you look at my record at New Hampshire, it's not good. Well, that particular year in 2002, Tommy Baldwin had done a really good job of getting, this is the geometry and the front clip we're going to run on these cars, and getting this 6-piston brake calibers to work to my driving style. So I don't need a whole lot of front brake. I don't need a whole lot of rear brake. And once we figured that out, we set a track record at Richmond. We had a good shot at winning that race. We broke Bristol. We got a top 5. So we were running good on short tracks. And I can remember the last practice, the car just, I had good balance on entry. Right at the apex, just wouldn't make the turn right. And Tommy had pretty much brought up there with his dad, and he made a good change with the left rear spring, and we went sailing the next day. We ran really good and were lucky enough to win the race.
So after '03, after even 2007, when you that was the last season where you participated in the Cup Series. In 2012, you ran at the opening Daytona race in the Truck Series and finished 8th. And as far as I can see, that was the only race you participated in, but you got a top 10. What was the reason why you didn't run anymore? Was it like a part-time thing? Because, I mean, 8th place is a good finish, but it was your only race of the year.
Well, the truck wouldn't run at all. So all I did literally until the last restart is Mr. Rex. And if you watch that race, it was nothing but a wreck fest. I mean, I was just in my front, out of my front window, I was kind of shocked at some of the moves and mistakes these truck drivers were making. And there's some great truck drivers out there, but everybody was just a little crazy that day. But the reason I was in the truck, it was Mike Hillman's truck. State Water Heaters was sponsoring Jeb for 5 races. Jeb was not qualified to run Daytona because he hadn't run a 1.5 mile track.
Oh, okay.
So that's where all that came from, and I just stood up and said, "I'll do it if that helps Jeb."
And I mean, you got a top 10 in the end, so I guess it helped his team, and it doesn't count towards him specifically in the point standings because you ran the whole race. So it still helped his team. I mean, it was still I hope it was a good experience for you because it was the only Truck Series race that you would ever run in your career. So it's definitely got to be, because I mean, now you can say you've ran all 3 series, the Cup, the Mid-Tier, and the Truck Series, because, I mean, you have more experience in some than the others, but still.
Well, I've never thought of that, Daniel. So you are correct.
I mean, there are many drivers who can't say that they've ran in all 3 series. And, like I said, you've driven in more races in the Busch Series and the Cup Series than in the Truck Series, obviously. But still, it's still something that not too many NASCAR drivers can say.
Well, I probably, when the whole thing happened with Bill Davis, I had a lot of offers to go run some good Xfinity cars. And looking back on it, I probably should. I just didn't know who the hell to trust anymore. I just was not sure. So I just came back home and got on with my life with my Wildlife Foundation, all that good stuff.
So eventually you did retire from NASCAR. I couldn't really find a specific year or anything about that, but was that essentially the reason why you decided to retire from NASCAR? You just couldn't really trust anybody anymore?
Well, that was some of it, no question. Because after I got the letter in the mail from Bill Davis, who I'd been very loyal to, I tried to make it with Gene Haas in the Zero car, and that worked okay, but my stock was down. So the last year with Davis wasn't running good, and we floundered around a little bit with Gene Haas car. My stock was down. I wasn't getting the kind of offers I needed. So and then a couple of years later, I really wanted to go back and race. And again, I went and drove for Morgan McClure for most of the season, and same kind of thing, just didn't have the resources. Heck of a nice folks. It's just, technology had found the sport at that point, and it was really hard for them to have the financial means to, get the engineering support and all that stuff to be competitive. So I don't know, man, my career, I think if I'd have looked after myself a lot better, would have gone a different path, but I don't have any regrets. We all in life would like to be able to go back and do a few things differently, and that's probably one of them, but it's all good. I was lucky to have the success that we had,
Yeah. So During your NASCAR career, what would you say is your favorite track that you've raced at? It doesn't have to be your best track. It's just the one that you like the most, the one that you appreciate the most.
Not just because we had some success at Darlington, but I would have to say Darlington for a couple of reasons. One is such a challenging track. But I found it the first time I went there with a car that Ed Free loaned my dad and I just found it to be awesome. I love running next to the wall. Certainly wasn't intimidating at all to me. And that's where the grip was. And I had a little bit different way to exit two, and I could really gain a lot of times. My car was working well off of two than on the competitors. And it's got the rich amount of NASCAR history. I mean, they don't call it the Lady in Black for nothing, too tough to tame. So what I felt like, particularly if you could get your balance right, that track would literally eat your tires up. So you're going to lose tenths of a second pretty quickly. They'd add up 2 seconds. And from there, I felt like a driver could make a little bit of difference no matter what his car was doing. And I like that versus some of these mile-and-a-half cutty cookers with this smooth surface and all that, where it's just pretty much dependent on what the car is doing.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I'm playing like NASCAR video games, I just do not like racing at Darlington because I cannot get a good grip on it. But at the same time, you're racing with an actual car, with an actual steering wheel and a 140-degree fire suit. I'm over here with a PlayStation controller and just trying to, just trying to do something like that. I mean, it's definitely a lot different, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just like I don't love racing at Darlington, but it's probably because I'm not good. I'm not good at racing there, so.
It's hard because you're trying to get your slip out of your front tire.
Yeah.
And you drive just a little bit. Well, if you're in the race car, you can feel that, and it's not a good feeling of judging how much you're going to slide, because that does turn into a Darlington slot strike. If you can steer it, and the input to the wheel is following, your car is following that, it's a lot easier to be good. But that's tough, I'm sure, on a computer.
All right. Well, currently, obviously, since you retired, NASCAR has had a lot of rule changes. Well, they've also made the Gen 6 cars. They've also added new tracks to the schedule, like the Charlotte Roval. And they've also had the stage races and the competition cautions, the 3-stage races. What's your thoughts on those? Do you think that, do you not like them? Do you think they're too weird or whatever? Like, what's your thoughts?
I think the car they got now is certainly better than the one they had before. I think that the front valence, this carbon fiber nose, is something that all the engineers are working on so much that I think it drives the cost up. I think they should do away with that and go more back like what we used to have. I think NASCAR needs to do so many things, like a motor rule. It's ridiculous to have to rent a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 motor to go run 500 miles. With the technology we got now, we could have just as good a competition with a motor that would last thousands and thousands of miles. So there's just a lot of things that NASCAR needs to do to cut the cost and try to get a little bit, just a little similarity of some grassroots racing. Because right now it's Formula One. It's Formula One racing, and majority of the people that get to race full time, particularly in the Xfinity truck season, are having to bring their own funding.
Yeah, that's not right.
Teams can't find the funding.
Yeah.
So even the ones, the big four that are really successful, they're billionaires, and they can work out the B2Bs to get the sponsorships on the cars. And it's just the whole business model. Look, Jeb has got some great partners like State Water Heaters, Alsco, LS Tractor, Ultimate Hitters, Rocky Boots. They're great companies, but it shouldn't cost as much as it does to run a single damn race.
Yeah, you're
And,
right.
and the activation and the marketing around the car will still work. But if you dump all your funding in just making the car go, it's just a balance right there. And I think they really need to get to damn work and get the balance more in favor of car owners and not the dollar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I mean, basically, a lot of the stuff that we see in NASCAR now is basically a marketing campaign. You see these wonderful sponsors on the car. I mean, the schemes look incredible. Like, they look amazing. But when it becomes less about racing and becomes more about making money and, just trying to turn a profit, then I guess that's kind of where it gets a little bit excessive.
Well, NASCAR, what's running the sport right now is a TV deal. And NASCAR gets the vast majority of that, not the team. So, look, I'm not belittling the cost of the sanctioning body. I just think the sanctioning body needs to be more concerned not only about their own efforts, but also the teams. At the end of the day, if those teams just didn't come to the race, they don't have an event. They don't have nothing to market but real estate. So I just think that the level of greed, there needs to be a balance right there. And I know that they're working on it and they're communicating on it, but change isn't coming fast enough.
No, I definitely have to agree with that right there. It's definitely not coming in, I guess, the fastest speed possible. So you have the Ward Burton Wildlife Foundation. What exactly does your foundation do? What is its purpose? What is your, I guess, just what's a quick overview of your Ward Burton Wildlife Foundation?
Well, when I started having success in NASCAR, and particularly after we won the 95 Rockingham race, I went to my good friend, lawyer, Bill Watson, and I didn't know anything about nonprofit, but I knew that now I had a little bit of a voice. I had some financial means. I wanted to give something back that has given so much to me, and that's the great outdoors and our natural resource. So it was the first driver to set up a nonprofit in NASCAR in 1996. We started out by helping other conservation groups like Department of Game, Land and Fisheries in Virginia, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Hunters for Hungry, things of that nature. Then it kind of evolved into protecting some property. And one in particular was a dear friend of mine, a role model, C.R. Sanders. He had 1,123 acres that he had let his children use, and I was lucky enough to be an extended member of the family, use as a child, and wanted to protect that land. So we started buying land around this area, finding grants like Forest Legacy to buy my friend Sanders track. But the foundation has grown so much now, so it's really four things. We're always concerned about the next generation. A lot of these kids have got nature deficit disorder where they just are not connected with the creeks, the ponds, and the beauty and the adventures and the excitement that the great outdoors can give someone, particularly a child. And then we run a program called ACUB. It stands for Army Compatible Use Buffer. So that's a contract with the National Guard. So we protect 2 military bases from encroachment. We rank number 1, number 2 at Fort Town Gap in Pennsylvania and Fort Pickett in Virginia, 2 National Guard bases. And then we do a lot of veterans outreach. We've got houses and land that's designated not only for them to be able to stay, but come utilize when they're available. And we do a lot of veterans events also with shooting, fishing, 3D archery, and things of that nature. And then the other just basic land management. being a proper steward for our natural resources. The foundation is bumping on owning 9,000 acres right now, and we manage the forest, the water quality, and diversify our habitat every step of the way on every tract of property. So it's grown a lot. Getting ready to hire another business manager here in a couple months, and just hoping to keep on growing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely interesting. For my viewers on YouTube, I have left a description, or I have left a link in the description for his website so you can check it out. You can learn everything about the Ward Burton Wildlife Foundation. But anyways, that will wrap it up for episode 6 of the Dan Wilkins Show. We'll see you guys next time in episode 7. So, until next time, this is Dan Wilkins signing off for now with Ward Burton as our guest. Thank you, Ward, for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel.